We have a very special guest. John Forslund, TV play-by-play announcer for the Seattle Kraken, joins us on this episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Just like Marvin Hagler, the boxer, changed his name to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I changed the name of our guest here to the great John Forslund. Hi, great. How are you doing?
Hey, you be careful, Glenn. You be careful with great. You got to tread softly with that, okay?
I think I'm on solid footing, though.
I don't know.
Let's talk about the team that we all watch together. Kraken have looked so good in some of their wins and laid such big eggs in some of their losses. It's hard to remember too many teams that it can look so good and so bad. And the Kraken have done that just within this last homestand. Can you make heads or tails of it?
I can. I think their problem is they have a problem embracing who they are. And I think as soon as they understand who they are, they're going to be okay. If they don't, if they play outside the boundaries of their system of how they need to play as a group, they're not a gifted team talent wise. They have good players. They have players who can try hard and have a commitment. And when they play as a unit, like they did, and we saw a few days ago on Sunday, this is a team that will bend a little bit and won't break. Now, if they think they can outscore their troubles, if they think they can take shortcuts, if they think they can take their foot off the gas and kind of coast through a game, it isn't going to work. And then they'll rely on the two goalies to bail them out. So I'm not surprised at anything I've seen this season because I believe this is the team that they are. And I think Lane has done a very good job with this team, getting them in a foundational place where they can play to somewhat of an identity. We will see before the Olympic break and certainly after the Olympic break if they really have an identity. And if they do, and depending on what management does with the roster, then we'll see. But I think it's really up to them. I think when they want to play the way they need to play, they're okay. And that's not taking into account special teams, which have shown a nice power play this year, penalty killing, which has been a struggle all season, but is improving a little bit. I'm just talking about straight on hockey and how they need to play, because when other things creep into their game, they don't play with pace. They turn the puck over, and they're not talented enough to play that way. Most of the teams are not, but there are teams in this league that can get away with it. I don't believe, in my opinion, the Kraken are that group.
Now, John, you said you weren't surprised by anything, but I think a lot of Kraken fans are surprised this year by the play of Philip Grubauer. What are you seeing that is so different this year, where he has been one of the best goalies in the league, whereas previously he has struggled among the worst?
Yeah, he has numbers wise, and there's been a lot of reasons for it. I think it's a very good and fair question. I'm going to rest on what we've done with him, in our booth. I'm proud of the fact that in his down times, we kind of had his back. I don't think it was all on him. I think some of it has been. I don't think he came to training camp last year in the best condition possible. And I think he paid a price for it. And I think he was chasing his tail most of the year. But how do you get through it and how do you bounce back? You agree to go to the minor leagues during your break. When everybody else is on vacation, he went and played 7 games in the American Hockey League. He doesn't have to do that. He could get his agent whining to management. He could balk at it. He could just not go. He's entitled to that. He's a bona fide NHL goalie with a very good career. I think if you take each singular season, there are different reasons why it's come off the rails for him. A lot of it had to do with a lack of confidence, which is surprising to me because, again, he does have a pedigree. But I think he's sensitive. He's sensitive to his own game. And I think just observing him, watching him play, the first year was a rough ride. I think he felt in the first year that I think they lost him in November when he didn't start against Colorado. That's a long time ago. But I think that year kind of went off the rails there. In the second year, look what he did in the second half of the season. I mean, the second half of the season was, he took the team on his back, took them through 2 rounds of the playoffs. Until somebody else does that in this market, he's the best goalie that's played for this team. Now, maybe DeCord's record and numbers are better, but in key moments, Grubauer delivered. Year 3, we kind of went backwards again, and year 4 was an abomination for him. There's no question. Now, you can ask some of the players about how they played in front of him last season, and they'll tell you that whoever was in goal was hung out to dry. Unfortunately for Grubauer, he was fighting it so much more than, say, Joey. And Joey was in that position of, I want the net. I'm going to get the net, which kind of played into his toolbox. And this season, it's been totally different. Joey, for the first time, is an expected starter. That's a different step for a goalie. And he's handled it okay. Very good at the front end of the season, kind of murky here in the middle. Great performance on Sunday. We'll see where it goes for him. Grubauer has basically put everything together. And I think the new goalie coach, Colin Zulianello, has done an excellent job with him this year. They kind of forged a relationship in the minor leagues last year. Grubauer trusts him. They trust him. It's a two-way street. I think when a goalie doesn't feel trust from the coaching staff, I think he starts to lose it because it's a very lonesome position. So anyway, I don't put everything on him. Yeah, there's enough blame to go around with what's happened with this team over the years, but certainly in terms of him working his way back, this is one of the greatest stories league-wide this year when you look at his numbers and how well he's played.
Top 10 in save percentage and goals against in the entire league. So
it's amazing. But again, it's really once it's funny about goalies, Glenn, in the National Hockey League. Once they have it, they probably understand how to get it back more than the skaters do. Okay? Because again, they rely on themselves. They have short-term memory. They have an ability to wipe things out of their life. It's a great thing. Most of us hang on to baggage, right? We hang on to it in our own personal lives. A goalie can't do that. If a goalie hangs on to baggage, you're going to be Fruit Loops. So I think, what we're looking at here is a guy that has a stronger mental capacity than people give him credit for. And I will say, as you both know, he's been a tremendous Seattle Kraken in terms of his professionalism, in terms of what he's done in this community. He loves Seattle. He loves the market. The fans still cheer for him hard. They still like Gruby. They get frustrated, but I hope this continues for him. I hope he shines in the Olympics. They're like a dark horse team. They've got some pretty good talent on the German squad, and I hope he fares well. It'll be great to watch.
Well, and because he'll be playing, he's going to stay sharp. Where
correct,
a lot of the other goalies in the league will be, doing their best skating around the practice rink. But I want to talk about an undeniable bright spot for the Kraken this year, and that's their fourth line. Ben Myers before he got hurt, Ryan Winterton, and Jacob Melanson. I'd like you to talk about the energy that the fourth line has brought. But before you do, I know you like nicknames for players, and if you don't have one for Melanson yet, I want to lay one on you. Do you have a pen or pencil handy?
Right here.
Okay. Good. 4 different colors to it, too.
Right.
So I think you should call Melanson the DJ because he plays all the hits.
That's good. I like that. Yeah. Here's my thing with nicknames. Sometimes the fans come up with them. Sometimes the fans, certainly we're in a day and age where you can read posts and, jump on various sites and you can get the pulse of the fan base. And sometimes they come up with ingenious nicknames. It's been throughout my career. It's a couple of times that's happened. But what I like to do is let it sit for a while and let a player really earn it. Like if people are asking me, geez, Myers, Winterton, and Melanson, you got to come up with a name for that line. I think it was Mike Benton that suggested it. And I love Mike, right? But I told him, I'm like, yeah, I get it. And I had one in mind, but I held back because they need more credibility. They need to play more. They need, when the Islanders had arguably one of the best fourth lines in hockey in the last 10, 15 years with Casey Cizikas, Cal Clutterbuck, and Matt Martin. They called them the identity line. Well, that's because they truly were the identity of their team. They started every game. They started playoff games. They scored big goals. They played together for years. So, okay, that makes sense. All the great the production line, the goal a game line, the gag line, all these lines that have had tags attached to them deserve it. And I think, when I use a nickname, I try not to be too trite with it. I try to make sure that it fits. I try to make sure that, the big cat, there's other big cats in the NHL. There's other big rigs in the NHL. But it fits both of these guys. In terms of Adam Larson, to me, with his whiskers, the red hair, it's more about how he goes into the corner and how he defends and how he just pounces, on a play and kills a play, gets the puck, strips it, moves it up the ice. And he has this grin on his face all the time. So I think that's what endeared me to that. I used Pepper Pot for Yanni Gord. That was another one. The fans were like, what the heck is he talking about? What is this? And you had to Google it and figure out what it was. But to me, that's what it is. It's boiling over on the stove. It's ready to go. It's always cooking. He's always moving, things like that. So Jacob's going to get a name at some point because
out Little Cat.
I squirted that one out today. Yeah, and I've used it. I've seen that. I don't, that one's okay. It's because we have a big cat. I don't know if he'll be Lil Cat throughout his career because he's going to make big plays, and he may emerge as a big cat in a small little package, here before long. But I really like that kid's instincts. And I do think getting back to Jacob, let him earn his opportunity, which he continues to do. Let him stick. Let him become a bona fide NHLer, and then we'll go to work with it. The other ones there, some people have used other nicknames for guys, and I've held back on them just because you kind of wait and see.
What a great segment. We will have part 2 tomorrow of the John Forslund interview. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I like how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation threads, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works right from your home computer or your phone, and so you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's quo.com/lockedonnhl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you for making Locked On Kraken part of your daily listening routine, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, please go check out our new Everydayer Club. This gives you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Kraken, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you also get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everyday or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Glenn, Friday, the Kraken played, I think, their worst, certainly one of their 3 worst games of the year. I think probably their worst against the Anaheim Ducks. They looked lifeless. They looked terrible. They looked like they did not belong in the National Hockey League. And after the game, Lane Lambert was seething. He said he was dumbfounded. He said he could not make logical sense out of an illogical situation. And the team really was a rock bottom moment. Since then, the Kraken have played 2 games, and they have played very well. So my question to you, Glenn, is what's going on here? And did the Ducks have anything to do with the Kraken's very strong recent performances?
Yeah, Lane Lambert said after that Ducks game about illogical situations, then he said, live long and prosper. But whatever. The result has been a wake-up call, and those are the words of the Kraken. It was interesting after the Capitals fell 5-1 to the Kraken in their most recent game, and Tom Wilson said afterward, quoting, "We got our asses kicked." And that was exactly the part of the anatomy that the Kraken felt it in the Ducks game. But since then, quite a bit better with wins over the Devils and the Caps. So I put the question to Jared McCann and Matty Beniers and Coach Lane Lambert. Jared, what happened after the Anaheim game? Because that was one of the poorest performances the team had all season. Since then, you guys have been playing lights out. Was that a direct response?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a kick in the butt, especially in video the next day. It was something, I feel like that's something that, Lane doesn't shy away from, and holding guys accountable. I feel like that's what makes a team better. So we watch video, we learn from it, and, we're going to obviously have games like that every once in a while, but it's got to be 1 in a million.
Definitely a little bit of a wake-up call. These games are absolutely huge. I think there's 2 or 3 games after break before the deadline. So these are big games for everyone that's kind of in the hunt, and I think that gave us a little bit of a wake-up call for us to start kicking it into gear a little bit.
In a way, it did help you get your message across about how your team has to play to win.
Well, I think our guys have done a real good job, overall, throughout the whole year of trying to play, the way we need to play in order to win and stick to our identity. At times we get a little bit away from it maybe, but, give them all the credit after the Anaheim game to come back here with these 2 games. And, we have to keep going, but a lot of commitment to the way we play, a lot of commitment to our structure, and, we piggyback our offense off of that.
2 players I'd like to single out whose performances have been consistent. One of them is Philip Grubauer. He didn't get really tested a great deal, which also makes Lane Lambert very happy. The Kraken only allowed 15 5-on-5 shots in the game against the Capitals, but do you realize starting with the 41 save effort Grubauer had against the Ducks in Anaheim on December 22nd, of the 12 games Grubauer has started, beginning with that game, in 6 of the 12, he's allowed exactly 1 goal. So he has been something else.
The thing I really like about Lane Lambert, and the more the season goes on, we learn what kind of coach he is, and he never seems to be out of answers. Even when he says, "I'm dumbfounded," he still comes back with a plan. And this is something that it's really struck me during training camp, how every player that we talked to, they talked about Coach Lambert's attention to detail. And in the first couple weeks, when asked, well, what is different about this team? They kept bringing up the details. and having answers and understanding the solutions to the problems. And maybe they don't always implement those solutions, as Coach Lambert alluded to in his answer, but they have the instructions. They have the answers to the test. And that is something that has not always been here in Seattle. Last year, particularly, you asked the players, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't know. We're out of answers. We have no idea." So Coach Lambert really seems like a detail-oriented X's and O's guy. He talks about pre-scouts. He talks about disrupting the seams. He's a lot more technical in his interactions with the media, and I assume that's just how he is. He's just a very technical person when coaching hockey. But I think that is so telling of how this team goes from a terrible effort, which, inexcusable, but every team has bad games. It's how you respond, and this team has responded brilliantly, including, and we're going to get more into this in this next segment, and this is called foreshadowing. The Kraken had a goal taken away and a hat trick taken away, and it resulted in a power play for Washington. And then Washington scored on the power play, and everyone was mad, and everybody was upset, and the energy got weird. But the Kraken didn't get derailed. They didn't come unglued. They just went back at it, and they just played strong hockey. They had 2 goals disallowed last night against Washington, and they still won 5-1.
As McCann said, Lambert's not afraid to read them the riot act. And I just want to brag on Gruby one more second because it gives me a chance to show this photo. I love this photo. Sometimes you just get lucky. But Grubauer hasn't been lucky. He's increased his save percentage now to .919. That's 3rd in the entire NHL. He lowered his goals against to 5th in the NHL. Zame, I did some research. I checked it out. You asked me about this. There is no minimum game requirement to be considered for the Vezina trophy. So let's start the Vezina watch for Philip Grubauer. And one other player I want to mention is Jacob Melanson. Again, against the Capitals, 7 hits, not including the hits, meaning punches he rained down on Brandon Duhaime in a late game fight. Seattle had 15 hits in the game. Melanson had 7 of them, and he's got 24 hits in his last 3 games.
Melanson has been a spark plug all season. It's unfortunate that Ben Myers got hurt, which is why he's back in the lineup, but it is really nice to see him in the lineup. Coming up after the break, we are going to talk about the nonsense that ensued after what we thought was a Jared McCann hat trick. This is one of the strangest things I have ever seen in hockey, and I'm really excited to get into it. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. And this one is a special one, Super Bowl 60, featuring the Seattle Seahawks against the New England Patriots. And FanDuel is making sure that you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game, not just of the year, but arguably in the history of the entire Seahawks franchise. Whether you're backing the favorite, the Seahawks, or riding the underdog, not the Seahawks, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everybody's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn to storylines, and every snap feels even bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off an incredible Seahawks season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over and you're going to have to go to a victory parade. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60, featuring the Seattle Seahawks. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's set the stage, Glenn. So Jared McCann, he's scored 2 goals already, and the Kraken are up 3-0. Jared McCann goes on a breakaway. Climate Pledge Arena gets real loud. They get the swell of anticipation. Me up in the press box, because we're close to the goal horn. It gets very loud, and I'm very good at the split second between the time the goal is scored and putting my fingers in my ears so I don't hurt. But sometimes when I'm feeling optimistic, when there's a breakaway, I'll put my fingers in prematurely. And I don't do that very often, but this one I felt it. I was like, oh, here it comes. And so sure enough, Jared McCann scores. The place goes crazy. It's the 5th hat trick in Kraken history. Jared McCann's second with the Kraken. The hats are raining down. Lithium is playing. Everyone's having a good time. And then we have an announcement from the referees. Prior to the goal, number 10 has a 4-minute high sticking penalty that is under review. And then the longest review happened. The broadcast, they're trying to figure it out. John Forslund can't find whatever the penalty is. JT can't find it. Nobody knows what's going on. They're playing 4 non-blondes. What's going on? They come back and they say, well, actually, prior to the goal, over 40 seconds prior to the goal, Matty Beniers committed a high-sticking penalty, and it's the 4-minute kind that is assessed because of the rules of apparent injury. So no goal, no hat trick. No, you're not getting your hats back. So sorry, fans. Instead of getting a goal, the Kraken now not only have to kill a penalty, but they have to kill a double minor. Washington scores on one of the penalties. They score a power play goal, and so we go from elation and celebration, a hat trick, to no hat trick. All your hats are gone anyway, and Washington has scored to pull within 2. Adding to the weirdness was, after all this happened, no time was put back on the clock. So they reviewed it, and then they were like, well, now we just play on. So we were confused, and I will let you talk before I keep going, because I have so much more to say.
Well, I want to reinforce something that you brought up, which was that Matty Beniers got his stick up. It did strike Justin Sorda for the Capitals in the face. That happened with 19:19 left in the third period. When Jared McCann came down and beat Logan Thompson cleanly on his breakaway, that happened with 18:33 to go in the period. That is 46 seconds of time elapsed. And something else on this play that was odd is that one of the referees, Tom Chmielewski, he's been a full-time NHL referee since 2015. He's looking directly at the play when Beniers commits the high sticking penalty. And Sorda's head snaps back, as it does when somebody hits you in the face with a stick. There is no reason he shouldn't have called the penalty himself right then, instead of needing to be told later by the referee, by the lines people, that this happened. And just to set up you going into your rule book discussion, The NHL rulebook last year was 234 pages. Can you imagine a rule book that's 234 pages? And that's 50% more pages than it was back in 1998. It was 160 pages. Last year, it was 234 pages. So the minutiae in there, well, take it away, Zane. We're about to see what I'm talking about.
So the minutia eluded everybody. The Kraken broadcast, which is excellent. I don't think it's I don't think it's debatable. I think it is the best broadcast in the league. Alison Lucan was having a crash out, justifiably so, in the post game, trying to figure out what's going on. Nobody knew what was going on. Ian Frenette, he's like looking at his phone. Post game is in chaos. And even Jared McCann, when asked, maybe he knew what was going on. No, he had no idea.
From what you know, what was the explanation on how that goal got taken?
Oh, I didn't get one. No, I don't know. You guys can tell me. I don't know. You guys probably saw it more than I did.
My theory is that the linesman might have told him after the fact.
After the fact.
I think that's what happened. But
aren't you supposed to blow it down right away if you see like a 4-minute major?
I don't know.
Okay. It happens, right?
So what happened was the linesman saw the penalty. Here's the rule. So we have a couple of rules going on. So first of all, the linesman must play stop immediately and report to the referees when it is apparent that an injury has resulted from a high stick. So specifically a high stick, right? That is the one thing that's called out in the rule book that has gone undetected by the referees and requires the assessment of a double minor penalty. And so two components there are important: high sticking and a double minor penalty, right? So what occurred was the linesman said, "Hey, I saw high sticking that appears to have caused injury." Now, should a linesperson witness an infraction committed by an attacking player, the linesperson shall report to witness the referees. The goal shall be disallowed and the appropriate penalty assessed. Meaning that the linesperson can't blow the play dead. That's not what the rule says. It says they must report to the referee. Hey, I just wanted a point of clarification. So the linesman can, in fact, blow the play dead, but only if he believes an injury has occurred. In this case, if he isn't sure that the injury has occurred, then he would wait until the stoppage, refer to the ref, and they would review it and then assess a penalty. So I wanted to be clear about that because I did misspeak slightly on this point. They also don't put their arm up, so there's no visual indication of a penalty, ensuing penalty, when the linesperson has observed specifically a high sticking penalty that causes apparent injury. And when a linesperson reports a double minor penalty for high sticking, following the scoring of goal by the offending team, the goal must be disallowed and the appropriate penalty assessed. So now the rule says what happened, right? The linesperson, they saw the penalty. They can't blow the play dead because the rules don't allow that. So they have to wait until play stops. Then they go to the referee and they say, "Hey, I saw a high sticking penalty and I think it may have caused injury or apparent injury." And injury just means like blood or knocked tooth or mostly blood, but it doesn't have to be exclusively blood. Then they review it and they say, "Okay, yep, there was injury on this play. Therefore, the goal is disallowed and the double minor is assessed." If they review the play and there is no injury, but there is a high sticking and it will only be 2 minutes, the goal stands. No penalty is assessed. It is specifically a double minor high sticking injury causing apparent injury noticed by the lineman, who then has to wait until the next stoppage of play to say something to the referee. The fact that this happened 46 seconds apart makes this so unusual. Now, we can take a break there, and I have more to say about the clock stoppage. But so far, they got everything right.
they got it right. What's wrong is how the rules are set up.
Yes. Well,
Now-
that is a different discussion. But the officials on the ice so far in our narrative, they've gotten everything right. So please, I just want to make that clear.
The time when the whistle should be blown should be when a scoring chance isn't imminent, not when there's an actual stoppage of play. I mean, these days, when the Situation Room wants to initiate a review, they will have the horn blown while play is going on, like, stop, we want to look at something. The lines person should have the ability to raise their arm, one arm, maybe not the same one they use for icing, but the other arm, to indicate to the referees, I've seen something. And as soon as there is not a scoring chance, also like when a player is injured, they'll wait till a scoring chance has passed, then they'll blow the whistle. They don't wait till the goalie covers the puck or a goal is scored.
Right.
The referee, because what happened was the Capitals cleared the zone. They were at center ice. They actually went down to the other end. You know, the Kraken came down, the Capitals came down. There was a lot going on. So the referee should be allowed then to blow the whistle when the puck's at center ice and say, okay, Mr. Lines person, what did you see? Instead of waiting until the next stoppage, which might be a hat-trick goal.
Right. And I want to be, but I think these are separate discussions. There is what is the rule and how was it enforced? Because last night the confusion was, how is this possibly correct given the rule book? The second discussion is, should the rule book be written the way that it is? And I think that these are very, very separate discussions. So I do want to keep it to just clarifying the confusion around last night. But I agree with you. There's so much, you can't make logic out of an illogical situation, is what I was thinking when reading these rules last night at after. Yeah, right. Live long and proper. So the now all that happened. Okay, so the lines person, they don't have the jurisdiction. That's great. Goals disallowed. But why didn't time go back on the clock? This benefited the Kraken because the Kraken were leading, but it was truly bizarre. And I think the strangest part about this is like, well, there's no way that at least that part was correct. Well, M. Zame Shyamalan's bringing the twist. So, if the review reveals goal should be counted, shall be reset to the time scored. If the review reveals that no goal was scored, no adjustment to the time clocks will be made. That's right. Even in the rule book, it explicitly says, don't put time back on the clock. And the reason why this feels so unusual is because it is. I could only find one other instance where we had a high sticking penalty that erased a goal. It was a game between the Leafs and the Sabres on December 20th, 2024. And Jason Zucker got a high sticking penalty, clipping Chris Tanev, Zucker playing for the Sabres. And Alex Tuck then scored 6 seconds later. They disallowed the goal. It was the same situation. The linesman saw the high sticking. It led to apparent injury. And so they reviewed it, and the goal was wiped off the board. And we got the same response that we got from the players. Zucker said, I've never seen that before, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's something I've never seen happen. Now, one thing that I found pretty interesting is in last night's game, the Kraken also had a later goal wiped off the board when the Capitals challenged for goaltender interference. And in the Sabres-Leafs game, they had a goal wiped off the board for goaltender interference. So, as far as the rule book is written, They got it all right, Glenn. Now the rules are nonsense, right? Like and we have gone into a deep, dark, scary, mysterious part of the rule book that we don't want to venture. It's dangerous. It'll eat your hats. I don't want to go there too often. Yeah, right. But last night, that's where we went, and so now we've been able to clarify the situation for all of you.
Thank you, M. Shyamalan. But
Zane Shyamalan. Zane Shyamalan. Yeah.
Well, hey, if you can have 2 third-period goals disallowed and still win in a laugher, you've had a good night.
You've had a good night. And after, everyone was in a good mood. Maddie seemed a little bummed for Jared McCann, which makes sense. But unlike the Sabres Leafs game, the Sabres lost that game. So that was a very different feel based on what I was reading on the reports. I didn't go back and watch the interviews, but last night I was like, that would have been fun. And Jared McCann was like, I just feel bad for people who lost their hats. And so it was a good time, and it's good to have this interesting rules discussion and not affecting the outcome of the game. So, but not something I'd ever seen. I know that it's not something you'd ever seen. Jeff Baker, he's never seen anything like that. We've all been watching hockey since at least the early 90s. I know you and Jeff have been watching for longer than that. And it was truly just like such a bizarre thing, especially the time not going back on was like really the thing that was like so viscerally jarring. Like there's no way any of this is correct. And it turns out it was all correct.
Yeah. Why is that the rule? Because that's the rule.
Who knows? So thank you for tuning in to Locked On Kraken. Tomorrow we have part 2 of the John Forslund interview. Please make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Kraken so you get all the latest episodes. You can find us at DavyJonesLockerRoom.com, where we do print coverage every day. You can also find us on all social media platforms at the handle at DavyJonesLR. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Kraken ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure that this is also part of your daily listening routine. Thank you so much. I'm Zane Begg.
I'm Glenn Dreyfus.
And we'll see you tomorrow.